You've done this before, or you've watched someone do it. A bathroom, a bedroom, a dare at a sleepover you still remember. You turned off the lights, you lit a candle, and you said the name. Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary. And then you waited for something to appear, something with blood on its hands, something that wanted to hurt you. But here's what they never told you. Bloody Mary wasn't born in a mirror. She was born in history, and the blood on her hands was real. So how did a 16th century queen become a ghost in your bathroom mirror? How did a woman who burned Protestants alive become a game children play at sleepovers? And why? After nearly 500 years. Do we remember the ghost, but forget the woman? This is the true story, not of a haunting, but of a haunted woman, and how we erased her. February 18th, 1516, Greenwich Palace, England. A daughter is born to Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. They name her Mary, and for a brief moment she is the most important child in England. Her father is the most powerful king in Europe. Her mother is Spanish royalty. Mary is raised in luxury, educated in Latin, French, Spanish, and music. She is a princess, an heir, but this is Tudor England, and nothing gold stays. Her father wants a son, and Anne Boleyn promises him one. When the Pope refuses to annul Henry's marriage, the king does something unprecedented. He breaks from Rome entirely, creates his own church, declares himself its supreme head, and in doing so, he sets into motion a religious war that will define England for centuries. Mary watches her mother discarded, exiled, humiliated. Catherine is sent away from court, forbidden to see her daughter, and Mary, once a princess, is declared illegitimate, a bastard, nothing. She's stripped of her title, her household is dissolved. She's forced to serve as lady-in-waiting to her infant half-sister, Elizabeth, Anne Boleyn's daughter, the new heir, the replacement. Imagine being 17 years old, watching your father erase your existence, watching your mother die in exile, watching the religion you love declared illegal. Mary holds on to two things, her Catholic faith and her fury. But here is the question no one asks. What does trauma do to a person who one day will have absolute power? Years pass. Henry VIII dies. Mary's half-brother Edward, a sickly Protestant boy, takes the throne. Edward pushes England further from Rome. Catholic practices are banned. Churches are stripped of statues and gold. Mary refuses to convert. She attends secret Catholic masses. She waits. In 1553, Edward dies at 15, and Protestant nobles, fearing a Catholic queen, try to block Mary's succession. They crown Lady Jane Grey instead, a Protestant, a puppet. But Mary fights. She gathers an army in East Anglia. Nobles switch sides. The people, surprisingly, support her. 9 days later, Jane Grey is deposed, and Mary Tudor, after decades of humiliation, becomes Queen of England. She's 37 years old. She has survived her father's rejection, her mother's death, her brother's persecution. She's outlasted them all. And now she has one mission: return England to Rome by any means necessary. What follows is not legend. It is documented history, and it is worse than any ghost story. In 1554, Mary reinstates the Heresy Acts. Protestantism is not just discouraged, it is criminal. The first burning occurs in February 1555. John Rogers, Protestant preacher, father of 11 children, he is burned alive at Smithfield, London. A crowd watches, some weep, some cheer, then Thomas Tomkins, then Lawrence Saunders, then John Hooper. Hooper's fire was poorly built, wet wood, low flames. It took him 45 minutes to die. Witnesses recorded that he beat his chest, crying, "Lord Jesus, have mercy on me," until his lips burned away and he could no longer speak. This was not hidden. This was public. This was policy. Over the next 3 years, approximately 280 people are burned alive for their Protestant faith. 280. Men, women, the elderly, the young. Rawlins White, a fisherman who could not read, memorized scripture to teach his children. He burned in Cardiff. Cicely Ormes was a young housewife from Norwich. She chose fire over recanting her faith. Julius Palmer was a schoolmaster. His own mother turned him in. The burnings happened everywhere. London, Oxford, Canterbury, Colchester, which lost more than any other town. Now, before we continue, A question: how many people did Henry VIII execute? Estimates suggest between 57,000 and 72,000, including 2 of his own wives. How many Catholics did Elizabeth I execute? Approximately 200 Catholics were executed for their faith during her reign, some by hanging, drawing and quartering. Arguably more brutal than burning. The Tudors were not gentle rulers, none of them. Religious persecution was not Mary's invention, it was family tradition, and yet only Mary is remembered as bloody. Why? Because Mary lost. She lost the religious war, she lost the narrative, and the winners, as they always do, wrote the history. By 1558, Mary is dying. She's 42 years old, she looks much older. She has failed to produce an heir, 2 false pregnancies, possibly caused by ovarian cysts or cancer, have left her humiliated and heartbroken. Her husband, Philip II of Spain, has largely abandoned her. He visits England twice during their entire marriage. He is not present when she dies. She has lost Calais, England's last possession in France, a military humiliation that haunts her. On November 17, 1558, Mary Tudor dies at St James's Palace, possibly of influenza, possibly of the cancer that had plagued her for years. Her final recorded words are about visions she claimed to see, little angels, children's voices. She asked to be buried beside her mother, Catherine of Aragon. That wish was not granted. Before Mary's body is cold, her half-sister Elizabeth is proclaimed queen. Elizabeth I, the Protestant queen, the victor. And here is where history becomes something else entirely. Elizabeth understands something that Mary never did. Power is not just held, it is performed. And the first performance is the destruction of her sister's memory. In 1563, 5 years after Mary's death, a book is published that will shape English memory for 400 years. John Foxe's Acts and Monuments. Better known as the Book of Martyrs, it contains detailed accounts of every Protestant burned under Mary. Names, dates, final words, illustrations of the flames. Elizabeth orders copies placed in every cathedral in England. It becomes the second most read book after the Bible itself. For generations, English children grew up reading descriptions of Catholic cruelty, Protestant suffering, the evil of Rome. And slowly Mary Tudor ceases to be a person. She becomes a symbol, Bloody Mary, the Catholic tyrant, the burner of innocence, the monster who tried to drag England back into darkness. The complexity vanishes, the trauma of her childhood, erased, her genuine religious conviction, dismissed as madness, a political context, ignored. But here's what the Protestant writers never mentioned. Elizabeth executed approximately 200 Catholics during her reign. Many were tortured first, hanging, drawing and quartering, the body kept alive while organs are removed, arguably more horrific than burning. Edmund Campion, Jesuit priest, tortured on the rack so severely he couldn't raise his hand to plead at his trial, then drawn and quartered at Tyburn in 1581. And yet, there is no book of Catholic martyrs in every church, no bloody Elizabeth, no centuries of propaganda. Elizabeth is remembered as Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, the architect of England's golden age. Mary is remembered as a bloodthirsty monster. The difference is not in their actions, it is in who controlled the story. Mary ruled for 5 years. Her reputation ruled for centuries. The name Bloody Mary appears in pamphlets, in sermons, in histories, in nursery rhymes, in whispers. It separates from the woman entirely. It becomes available for something much older to claim it. Because while Protestant England was building its villain, something else had been waiting in the shadows for centuries, something that had nothing to do with queens or burnings, something that had always lived in mirrors. Long before Mary Tudor was born, long before England existed, humans were staring into reflective surfaces, hoping to see the future. This practice has a name: catoptromancy, divination by mirror, or more broadly, scrying. The Egyptians used pools of oil, the Greeks favoured bronze, the Romans consulted professional mirror gazers called specularii. By the medieval period, mirror divination had spread throughout Europe. It was not considered demonic, it was simply traditional. Let us be absolutely clear. These mirror rituals existed for thousands of years before Mary Tudor drew breath. Mary Tudor was born in 1516. Mirror divination dates to ancient Mesopotamia. There is no connection. Not yet. In medieval and early modern Europe, one mirror ritual became especially popular among young women. On certain nights. Halloween, Midsummer's Eve, St. Agnes' Eve. A young woman could supposedly glimpse her future husband in a mirror. The ritual varied by region, but the basics were consistent. Darkness, candlelight, a mirror, and concentrated gazing. The Scottish poet Robert Burns documented these practices in his 1785 poem, Halloween. He describes young women eating apples at the glass, gazing into mirrors while eating, hoping to see a future spouse appear. If you were fortunate, you would see your future husband's face materialize in the glass, but if you were unlucky, you would see a skull, a sign that you would die before marriage, or worse. You would see the face of a corpse, your own future death staring back at you. Modern psychology has an explanation for these visions. It's called strange face in the mirror illusion. In 2010, Italian psychologist Giovanni Caputo documented it scientifically. When subjects stare at their own reflection in low light for extended periods, something strange happens. Their faces begin to distort, features blur, recombine, become monstrous or unrecognizable. 66% of subjects reported seeing huge deformations of their face. 48% saw fantastical beings, 18% saw a parent's face. Dead or alive, the brain, deprived of stable visual input, begins to fill in gaps. It generates faces, sometimes familiar, sometimes terrifying. The medieval women weren't seeing ghosts, they were experiencing a neurological phenomenon. Their brains were tricking them. There was no queen in the mirror, there was no ghost to summon, there was only biology and belief. These rituals existed across Europe. England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany, Scandinavia. Each region had its own variations, and the names changed constantly. Mary Worth, Mary Wales, Hell Mary. In some regions, no name at all. Just the mirror game. But notably, for centuries, none of these rituals were connected to any queen. None mentioned blood. None invoked Mary Tudor. We have two separate rivers of tradition. A historical villain named Bloody Mary. An ancient mirror ritual with no specific name. For centuries they never touched, until the writers arrived. The 18th century brings a new literary obsession. Gothic horror, ruined castles, ancient curses, bloody histories, ghosts that won't rest. Writers raid history for villains, and Tudor England, with its beheadings and burnings and religious wars, provides endless material. Bloody Mary. A name already synonymous with cruelty, already detached from nuanced history, already a symbol. The Gothic writers don't research her, they don't humanize her, they use her. She becomes a shorthand, a reference, a flavour of ancient English evil. Then comes the Victorian age, and the Victorians are obsessed with death. Memento mori, spiritualism, seances, photography of the dead. The Victorians court death like a lover, and they love mirrors. Mirrors covered during mourning, lest the dead become trapped. Mirrors used in seances to contact spirits. Victorian children's games are surprisingly macabre. Ring Around the Rosie, London Bridge is Falling Down. Games with death hiding in the lyrics. And somewhere in this era, in this cultural soup of Gothic horror and death obsession, the two traditions finally merge. An ancient mirror ritual meets a bloody historical name, meets Victorian ghost obsession. The result is something new, a ritual for summoning a specific ghost, a queen who died in flames. Or should have. A woman with blood on her hands who reaches through mirrors. Details are added that have no historical basis. Mary appears with blood dripping from her eyes. She never suffered such wounds. She scratches faces. A later invention. She kills. Though she died in bed of illness, not violence, the historical woman vanishes. The complex story of religious conflict and political tragedy becomes a simple ghost story. By the 20th century, the ritual is ubiquitous. Sleepovers, campfires, school bathrooms. Every child knows the rules. Dark room, candle, mirror. Say the name 3 times. Wait for her to appear. The fear is real. The adrenaline is real. The strange face in the mirror illusion makes visions likely. The ritual works. Psychologically, if not supernaturally. And Mary Tudor, a woman who suffered immensely, ruled briefly and died heartbroken, is reduced to a children's game. History gave her the blood. Folklore gave her the mirror, and together they created something that never existed, a ghost with a queen's name and no queen's story. Today, millions know the ritual, virtually none know the history. The game has completely consumed the woman. Some folklorists now argue the ritual has nothing to do with Mary Tudor at all. That bloody Mary was always just a name, applied after the fact to an older practice. And perhaps that's the most unsettling part. We don't even know anymore what we're summoning. The myth has outgrown all possible origins. So let us return to where we began. A dark room, a mirror, a candle, a name repeated 3 times. The darkness triggers a neurological phenomenon. Your brain generates faces that aren't there. The name you speak belongs to a woman who died in 1558. She never haunted mirrors. She never attacked children. She never reached through glass. She did order the deaths of approximately 280 people. That is real. That is documented. That is horrific. But she was not uniquely cruel. She was a Tudor. She did what Tudors did. She was followed by a queen who did much the same and was celebrated for it. The difference is that Mary lost, and losers don't write history. They become history's villains. Myths are easier to remember than history. Ghosts are more frightening than monarchs. Simple evil is more satisfying than complex tragedy. And repetition transforms fear into ritual. Tell a story enough times and it stops being a story. It becomes true. We didn't inherit a ghost. We inherited a game built from propaganda and folklore and the strange ways our brains process candlelight. Mary Tudor was a woman, a traumatized, devout, stubborn, politically outmaneuvered woman. She wanted to save England's soul. As she understood salvation, she failed. She died abandoned by her husband, mourning imaginary children, having lost Calais, having lost everything. And then her enemies turned her into a monster. And then folklore turned her into a ghost. And then children's games erased everything else. Bloody Mary was never trapped in a mirror. She was trapped in the stories we chose to tell. Every ghost was once a person. Every monster was once human. And every legend buried someone real. How many other ghosts were once real people, erased by the myths we made?